Gratitude is often portrayed as something that naturally arises in moments of joy or abundance. We express thanks when we receive something we desire: success, love, peace, comfort. But the truest form of gratitude does not emerge from comfort. It is born in adversity, when being thankful feels least appropriate, yet most necessary. When life wounds us through loss, heartbreak, illness, betrayal, or failure, our first instinct is often to close off. We seek safety in anger or numbness. Gratitude seems not only out of reach, but irrelevant. Why should we be thankful when life has taken more than it's given? And yet, it is precisely in those raw, aching moments that the power of choice reveals itself. We may not be able to change our pain, but we can decide how we respond to it. Gratitude in suffering is not denial. It is defiance. It is the act of looking pain in the face and saying, "You will not make me blind to what is still good." It is the courage to whisper thank you, not because everything is fine, but because something still matters. This choice is quiet. It often begins with the smallest acknowledgements. The breath that still rises and falls, the friend who checks in, the sunrise that spills golden light across a dark room. These tiny recognitions of good, even amidst devastation, become the roots of deeper resilience. Gratitude in suffering doesn't require certainty. It doesn't mean we understand why something happened. It simply means we are open to the idea that even in the darkest chapter, something meaningful may still be unfolding. It's not about being okay with what hurt us. It's about holding on to what's left and finding value in the lessons, the strength, the perspective that emerge only through endurance. The remarkable thing is, once we start looking for these glimpses of grace, they begin to multiply. Pain doesn't vanish, but it becomes a little easier to carry. Gratitude doesn't change the circumstances, but it changes us. It shifts our gaze from despair to possibility, and from victimhood to agency. And in that shift lies an extraordinary kind of healing, one that begins deep inside the spirit. When everything is going well, when life flows smoothly, when success is abundant, and relationships feel easy, it's tempting to believe we understand what matters most. But comfort often blinds us. It fills our schedules, our thoughts, our emotional spaces with noise, expectations, comparisons, distractions, and superficial pursuits. It becomes easy to chase the illusion of meaning instead of seeking the real thing. But then pain arrives. Sometimes it comes suddenly, like a thunderclap. Other times it creeps in quietly, a slow unraveling of something we thought was certain. In these moments, our world narrows. The unimportant begins to fall away. The masks we wear, the games we play, the things we pretended mattered, they start to dissolve. We begin to see with painful clarity. Pain is a filter. It strips down our lives to the essentials. When we are hurting, we don't crave applause, possessions, or perfection. We crave connection. We long for authenticity. We reach not for the shiny things, but for the real ones, the hand that holds ours, the voice that says, "I'm here." The quiet faith that tells us we'll survive. What once consumed our attention, status control, external validation, loses its power. Pain awakens us to the fragile and beautiful truths that were always there, hiding behind the noise. the value of time, the preciousness of health, the depth of love, the irreplaceable comfort of being understood. It teaches us that a single honest conversation can outweigh 1,000 surface level interactions, and that presence, pure, undistracted presence, is more healing than any solution or fix. Moreover, pain forces us to reckon with ourselves. It confronts us with questions we'd often rather avoid. What do I truly believe? Who do I become when everything falls apart? What am I holding on to that no longer serves me? These questions, while difficult, are sacred. They refine us. They guide us inward toward a deeper sense of self-awareness, purpose, and spiritual clarity. It is in the rawness of suffering that we begin to identify what is non-negotiable in our lives and what was merely filler. It is in crisis that we learn the difference between what is urgent and what is truly important. We may not welcome the pain, but in its wake, it leaves. There is something profoundly humbling about adversity. When life brings us to our knees, whether through personal loss, illness, failure, or rejection, we are reminded of just how little we truly control. The plans we made, the identities we carefully crafted, the confidence we carried, they can all be undone in a single moment. And in that unraveling, something deeper begins to emerge: humility. Humility is not weakness. It is the quiet strength that comes from recognizing our limitations, our need for others, and our place in something larger than ourselves. In the absence of control, we begin to accept that we cannot do everything alone, that we are not invincible, that we are not meant to carry life's weight without support. Adversity strips away the illusion of self-sufficiency. It forces us to ask for help, not out of convenience, but necessity. And in doing so, we open the door to genuine connection. Vulnerability becomes the bridge between souls. When we share our brokenness, we make space for others to say, "Me need too." That moment of mutual recognition creates a bond far stronger than any built on perfection or pride. These connections, forged in difficulty, are often the most enduring. We remember who sat beside us in silence when words failed, who picked up the phone late at night, who saw us not as burdens, but as human beings worthy of care. And we, in turn, become more attuned to the pain of others. Adversity softens our edges. It expands our empathy. It gives us the eyes to notice suffering and the heart to respond to it. Through hardship, we also become more honest with ourselves and with those around us. The pressure to pretend fades. The need to impress loses its appeal. We begin to value realness over image, depth over charm, presence over performance. This shift, though subtle, transforms the way we show up in the world. In times of adversity, many people discover community not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of shared humanity. A stranger's kindness, a friend's understanding, the simple act of being seen. These experiences remind us that our struggles do not isolate us. They connect us. They place us in the shared story of what it means to be alive, to be fragile. Pain is a universal experience. It comes in many forms: grief, heartbreak, disappointment, failure. And no one walks through life untouched by it. But while we may not have the power to eliminate pain, we do have the power to shape how we live with it. This is where gratitude steps in, not as a cure, but as a catalyst for transformation. Gratitude does not ask us to pretend that everything is fine. It doesn't demand that we smile through suffering or minimize the depth of our wounds. Instead, it invites us to shift the lens, to look not only at what we've lost, but at what we've learned. Not only at what broke us, but at what still remains. It gives us a way to hold our pain without letting it harden our hearts. When we are in the thick of pain, it's easy to become consumed by it, to define our entire reality by what is missing, what went wrong, what hurts. Gratitude interrupts that spiral. It doesn't erase the anguish, but it gently redirects our focus. It whispers, "Look again. What else is here?" Perhaps it's the resilience that pain uncovered in us, or the unexpected kindness from someone we barely knew, or the lesson that reshaped our priorities. Gratitude helps us see that even within our suffering, there are threads of grace woven through. These threads are not always obvious. Sometimes they take time to reveal themselves. But once noticed, they begin to soften the edges of our sorrow. Gratitude transforms pain by offering it purpose. When we can say, "This hurt, but it taught me something," or "I wouldn't wish for this, but I grew from it," we reclaim agency. The experience no longer defines us by what it took. It begins to define us by what it gave. That shift empowers us to carry our pain differently, not as a burden dragging us down, but as a truth that shapes our strength. There's also a grounding effect that gratitude brings during times of suffering. While pain pulls us into the past, into what was lost or what could have been, gratitude anchors us in the present. It reminds us of what is still good, still beautiful, still worth holding onto right now. This doesn't diminish the pain, but it gives it context. It places our suffering. It's a comforting thought to believe we grow the most when life is kind, when days are peaceful, when things go according to plan, when the world meets us with open arms. But the truth is, ease rarely demands more from us. It rarely stretches us. Real growth, the kind that deepens the soul, strengthens the character, and transforms our inner landscape, almost always begins in discomfort. Discomfort is the forge where resilience is tempered. When we are challenged, when we are pressed to our limits, when we are stripped of the familiar and forced to confront the unknown, we are given the rare opportunity to discover who we truly are beneath the surface. Not who we pretended to be when things are good, but who we become when everything we once leaned on is shaken. It is in the silence of loneliness, in the age of failure, in the heavy weight of grief, that we often hear the clearest truths. Adversity pushes us into the raw, unfiltered parts of ourselves. It unmasks the ego and brings us face to face with our insecurities, our fears, our dependencies. But in that space, transformation begins. The discomfort becomes the teacher. It teaches us to adapt, to release what no longer serves us, to build strength we never knew we had. This growth isn't glamorous. It's not Instagram worthy. It happens quietly, often painfully. But it is real. We learn patience when everything takes longer than we hoped. We learn courage when we're forced to move forward in uncertainty. We learn compassion when our own pain softens us to the struggles of others. Every scar becomes a reminder not only of what hurt us, but of what they overcame. Comfort, on the other hand, can lead to stagnation. It can keep us in routines, relationships, and mindsets that feel safe but stifle us. Without discomfort, we rarely question, rarely stretch, rarely evolve. Growth needs friction. It needs resistance to build the kind of strength that lasts. Just as a muscle cannot grow without strain, the soul cannot expand without pressure. We may not choose the pain, but we can choose how to use it. And when we allow discomfort to guide us instead of break us, we begin to change from the inside out. Our perspectives widen, our hearts deepen, and we begin to live not just with more suffering. When it strikes, often feels senseless. It shakes the foundations of what we thought we knew about life, about ourselves, about fairness and control. We find ourselves asking, why did this happen? What did I do to deserve this? These questions echo in the hollow chambers of our pain, and in the absence of answers, the suffering can feel overwhelming and meaningless. But somewhere within that chaos lies a quiet turning point, the moment we stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? That shift doesn't erase the suffering, but it begins to frame it. It moves us from helplessness to a place of quiet power. It allows us to search for meaning, not to justify the pain, but to transform it, to give it purpose, to let it shape something new within us. Meaning doesn't come immediately. It is not an easy or automatic revelation. Sometimes it arrives only after long nights of reflection, through slow and difficult healing. Other times it comes from the stories we hear, the people we meet, or the changes we make in our own lives because of what we endured. But when we begin to give our suffering a context, when we begin to say, this hurt, but it changed me, or this loss carved space for something deeper to grow, we begin to reclaim the power that pain tried to take from us. Giving meaning to suffering does not romanticize pain. It does not suggest that suffering is inherently noble or that we should seek it out. Rather, it acknowledges the reality that life is filled with hardship, and then asks, what will we do with it? Will we let it turn us bitter, or will we let it awaken us? Will we remain trapped in our wounds, or will we allow them to become windows through which we see life more clearly and perhaps even help others find light? Healing starts when we begin to understand that pain doesn't have to be the final word. It can be the beginning of a deeper, wiser, more expansive chapter. When we choose to find meaning in suffering, we no longer carry it as a weight that drags us down. We carry it as a story we've lived through, survived, and grown from. We begin to